city calls Sean Calderon.
Sean Calderon?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, Mr. Calderon. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Okay. Have a seat. Adjust the microphone to your liking and state your name for the record, please.
Sean Calderon.
And Mr. Calderon, can you spell your last name for the record?
Calderon.
Okay. Mr. Calderon, were you present at a McDonald's restaurant at 1425 Southwest Avenue in the city of Waukesha on February 4th, 2014?
Yes, I was.
And at that time, why were you there?
I had stopped in to get something to eat. I believe I came into Waukesha to go to Kohl's to get my wife a Valentine's Day present.
Okay. So, when you say you came to get her a Valentine's present, were you coming early? Early? You were early for the Valentine's present then?
The Valentine's was the next weekend.
Okay, thank you. And at that time, when you were at the restaurant, what, if anything, can you tell the court that occurred that was unusual?
I had sat down, ate my food, and I don't know if I'm like everybody else, but I kind of people watch a little bit. And a lady and a gentleman came in with a younger girl, and they had sat down waiting for their food. I'm assuming their food was ready because the mother had gotten up to go get the tray of food. And at that time, a gentleman that was sitting in it was probably the southwest corner of the restaurant, as I'm facing him, got up, went up to the counter, and then walked back. And as he was walking back, he pulled his cell phone out of his front left pocket, angled it down, and it was on record because what caught my eye was the windows of the store and the background of the phone, and he was angling it to a point to try and catch the little girl in the cell phone.
Okay. Now you say that, I believe you said you made note of the southwest corner.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, you said who was sitting in the southwest corner?
The defendant.
Okay. Now, when you say the defendant, do you recognize Mr. LaHote here?
I recognize him by face, but I don't know Mr. LaHote at all.
So this
Is he present in the courtroom here today?
Yes, he is.
And would you point out where he is seated and what he's wearing if you recognize
Seated
him?
in the front with a green undershirt and a plaid button-up shirt.
Okay.
Thank
The
you.
record will reflect identification of the defendant by the witness. You may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. And now, was this individual, this defendant, was he alone at the time?
Yes, he was.
And was he seated at a table or a booth?
It would have been a booth.
Okay. At the time that you saw this gentleman go up to the counter, can you tell the court whether there were any adults that were present with this young girl?
I believe when he got up to walk to the counter, there was a male with I would assume to be the mother of the child.
Okay.
And he had gotten up to go help her get the food. So it was, as he transitioned up to the front of the store, the male kind of got up and went to go help get the food to bring back to the counter or back to the table.
Right.
But by that time, the defendant had walked first before both of them returned.
So let me ask you, time-wise, how long did this take for Mr. LaHote to go up towards this young girl, take the recording and come back?
Maybe a minute.
Okay. And can you tell the court approximately how close Mr. LaHote got to this young girl?
It was probably within 5 feet.
Okay. And how far were you from Mr. LaHote?
I'd say about 15.
Okay. So when you saw this incident, you observed this individual doing this, what, if anything, did you do at the time?
At the time, I did not do anything right away. I was still in kind of like shock and all that I had seen it. When the defendant got up to go refill his soda is when I kind of said I had to say something. So I had stepped in the aisleway and confronted him.
Why did you feel that you had to say something, sir?
Because I have a daughter the same age as the little child that was on
Okay.
in the store that day.
And when you approached then Mr. LaHote,
hmm
at that time, what, if anything, did you say to him?
I had stepped in his way and asked him, "Tell me you didn't just do what you just did." And he replied with, "That's what?" And I told him, "I just saw you record that little girl on your phone."
Okay. And did he admit that at that time?
No, he did not.
At that time, then, I assume, well, what happened then after?
Then I had asked him, I said, "Well, if you didn't, then let me see your cell phone." Because I had known, the time that he had slipped it back in and sat back at his table, I was watching him the whole time.
When you
and
mean, I'm sorry, when you
so
mean he
when-
slipped it back in, slipped what back in?
His cell phone,
Into his pocket?
yeah. He had never touched it again after that. So if it was recording, it was still on record.
And how did you know, you said you knew that it was on record, and how did you know that?
Because the cell phone displays the view on the front glass part of it, on the actual phone.
All right. Did you see any lights on the camera or
You
cell
see
phone?
the little red cord?
Okay.
Yeah.
And so, did he show you his phone at all?
No, he did not.
At the time that you first initially approached the defendant, what type of voice were you using?
It's more mild at first, but
Okay.
as he denied, I think I got a little more aggravated.
And when you got aggravated, did you use any profanity?
Yes, I did.
What did you say?
I told him I should have kicked his ass. I called him a sick motherfucker.
And did you ever attempt to steal his phone?
No, I did not.
When you made these comments towards the defendant, what was his reaction then?
He kind of backed up and then kind of just repeated everything I was saying. Called me a sick motherfucker. Told me to go ahead and try and kick his ass.
And
Then
in what tone of voice was he speaking?
loud enough that people could hear it.
How many people approximately would you say were in the restaurant at this time?
15 to 20.
Could you tell whether or not these people who were eating, they were eating their food, is that correct?
Yeah, I believe everybody was eating.
And could you tell whether or not these people were staring at the two of you?
Yes.
What, if anything, strike that. Did anyone approach you?
There was a store manager that didn't come up directly to us, but I would say within 10 feet,
Okay.
with a cordless phone in his hand, saying that he was going to call the cops if we continued to disrupt the store.
And what did you say to him?
I asked him to call the cops.
And why
I
did you
pleaded
ask?
several times for
Why
him,
did you ask him, sir, to call the cops?
because I knew that if he were to have left the facility, there's multiple things that he could have done with that cell phone.
Okay.
If-
So, who in fact called the police, if you know?
I called the police. Made a 911 call after the individual had left. I believe the store did call, and I believe the mother of the little girl made a phone call too.
Okay. What did you do? Well, strike that. Did you wait for the arrival of the police?
Yes, I did.
Did you inform the police as to what occurred in the restaurant?
Yes, I gave a statement.
A written statement?
Yep. And then I know at the time of the altercations, of when we were getting loud and it was disturbing the McDonald's, customers were getting upset. The mother of the little girl was getting upset with me on the language that was used. And I didn't want to say exactly what I saw because the little girl was still in the store at the time.
Okay.
So I didn't want to scare her at all. So I had just kindly said to the mother, if you only knew what this is all for, you wouldn't be telling me to shut up.
At some point in time, you spoke to the mother later? did
Yes,
you?
after they left.
Okay. Can you tell the court what Mr. LaHote did when the police were called?
Mr. Holt went over to his table, gathered his stuff up, put it in his bag, and left the facility. And at that point, I had told the McDonald's manager, do not let him leave the store. Somebody take his license plate down. And that's when I explained to the mother exactly what had happened.
Okay. And did you see Mr. LaHote leave the parking lot?
Yes, I did.
And did you see him driving away?
Yes, I did.
Do you recall what type of vehicle he was driving away in?
It was a black Taurus.
Did you in fact take down the license plate?
I did not. I believe the mother was the one that wrote it down.
Okay.
She was at that end of the store where the parking lot was.
Do you recall the police arriving on scene
Yes, I do.
and now, you had previously identified Mr. LaHote as the defendant, who was the individual who was on scene at the time. Is there any question in your mind that this individual, that Mr. LaHote, is the individual that you had the confrontation with on February 4th, 2014?
There's no question in my mind that is him.
Pardon me?
There's no question in my mind that is him.
And how close did you get to Mr. LaHote at the time?
Within a foot, 2 feet.
I have no further questions of Mr. Calderon, Your Honor.
Before I allow cross-examination in this case, I have a couple of questions. Mr. Calderon, when you say that the defendant, Mr. Lote, was taping with his phone or recording with his phone this little girl in the restaurant, about how far away was he from where she was? In other words, where were they situated and how far away were they?
She was sitting along the back side of the restaurant on the
At a
bench.
table?
At a table, facing me. So we were facing each other. The aisleway from the table was probably, it's about 5 feet, 5, 6 feet.
Was anything going on at the time in the restaurant, such as a birthday party or something along that line, where there were other children around, or
No,
anything going on that way?
no.
Okay. Did you receive a citation as a result of this?
No, I did not.
Were you ever charged as a result of this?
No, I was not.
I have no other questions at